Good morning, friends. My name is Sandra Clay. I'm the pastor at Cook's United Methodist Church in Wilson County, Tennessee, and it is wonderful for us to share these moments together. For those of you who join us on a regular basis, you already know we're here Monday to Thursday at 8:30 in the morning, live stream here on our church's Facebook page. But we're so glad for those of you who can join us at a later date or just a later time. And those of you who may be finding us on our YouTube channel, we welcome you too. We already hold you in our hearts. We're praying for you, and we hope for an opportunity to get to know you better. Those of you who watch on a regular basis already know that there is a kind of a sense of community that we are building with one another when we're daring enough just to say good morning to everybody like Janet has. And maybe a response to something that you hear is a bold move, an act of faith for you. I can guarantee you that folks will respond to you and will receive your comments and your questions. We're doing our best to kind of travel with each other and companion one another at this time, and so we hope that you'll reach out to each other that way. For those of you who join us at a later time, we still get those comments, and those of you who are on YouTube, just remember that our website is up and running, and we're not the most technologically savvy in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but we're doing our best to keep up with you guys. And so if you're joining us for the very first time, or you're still new to us, we are in the season of Advent now, and we are in the second week. A lot of churches who celebrate the liturgical year or the church year knows that this is the beginning of a new year. For us, it begins with Advent. Advent is a Latin word that means to come, and so we watch and we wait with anticipation. It's not as if Jesus, the Messiah, is coming into the world for the very first time, but this season of preparation is a reminder that we can do one of two things. We can just prepare externally, like lights on our houses and trees up in our dens, and we can make the season about that kind of preparation and celebration, buying gifts and loving each other that way, or we can prepare ourselves to the core of who we are, to really receive Jesus in his fullness, and that's what we're trying to do. So in this second week of Advent, we're focusing on peace. And peace is larger than just the absence of conflict. We looked yesterday at how Jesus invited the world, creation, to hold peace, and it ended with a storm being calmed. Doesn't mean that there was a lack of movement there. The water may have looked like glass, but you already know that there are ripples underneath, and there's still a world teeming with life. So to use that metaphor and to remind ourselves that there is the possibility and the probability of peace for us, regardless of the circumstances that we face, is quite a bit of good news, don't you think? And so today I want us to wrestle a little bit with God's promise through words that Isaiah spoke. Now, this is from the 26th chapter of Isaiah. If you've read any of the prophets' work, those earlier chapters carried with it a message of both challenge and hope, because God's people had failed to be obedient. They had been a bit rebellious, and they had also been very negligent of the covenant relationship that God offered them. And so they began to hear words, not the rough translation would be, I told you so. I told you this was going to happen. This 26th chapter is early enough in the prophet's work that we begin to hear Isaiah on behalf of God's people dreaming about what that day is going to be like when God rescues them, when God comes to their aid. And the Old Testament is filled with that Deuteronomic pattern. We've talked about that before, where they get themselves in a pinch, they cry out to God, God comes to them and responds and rescues them and sets them back on their feet again, and then they get them. Is that sounding familiar? We still live in that kind of pattern today. And so that's why I want this verse from Isaiah, the 26th chapter, to not just be a dream that we cross our fingers for and hope, i.e., we wishfully think that it may happen for us, but in this season of Advent and beyond, would you watch with conviction that this day, this promise, will come true in your life? This is the New American Standard translation that I'm reading. Would you hear these words? I'm going to read them for us 2 or 3 times so we can let them just soak in. For this is the promise of God as spoken to us by the prophet Isaiah. The steadfast of mind you will keep in perfect peace, because that one trusts in you. Did you hear it again? The steadfast of mind you will keep in perfect peace, because that one trusts in you. Oh, I want you to own the very depth of this truth for you, because my guess is if it's not this very day, it's another day coming soon that you need to be reminded that you already have within you, because God lives there, what you need to know peace in the very midst of what others would say is impossible to know peace in the midst of. But I'm a backwards kind of girl. Let's go backwards. The because part of this, isn't that what we run to first? We want to look at the proof of things before we stick our toe in the water. And this has to do with an act of trust. The one who trusts in God will reap this promise. Just a quick reminder, in Hebrew thought, to trust, the best metaphor or picture for that is the one who would fall prostrate in front of another. The reason why that's a good picture of trust is because you turn your vulnerable, weak side to the one whom you are trusting. In a dog, you've seen a puppy do this before. They'll go belly up because they, not just because they want a belly rub, but they love you so much. They are trusting you with their life. We trust God when we know a bit of who God is, and we recognize how God has already come to us, not just as judge and jury, the one who is looking to squash us, but the one who has given us life, the one who redeems us, the one who sustains us in all things. And so trust is going to be key. But we also have to understand what our part in this, in the living out of trust. And so now I want us to look at the first part of the verse. What does it mean for us to be steadfast of mind? Most of us in the Western world have learned something of the pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. We muscle through. We keep on keeping on. You got to do the things that you think you can't do. We work hard to prove ourselves, and I think it begins with a I do it myself kind of an attitude that most of us learned early on in life, like standing on our own 2 feet when we were still so wobbly. I do it myself can move from an act of understanding our own agency and capability, however, to a place of stubbornness and as the Old Testament calls the Israelites, a stiff-neckedness in life. yeah, I just want to do it my way. And if you would get out of my way, I could accomplish that. Isn't that sad when that's the attitude that we have even with the one who made us? And so steadfast is not that holding our ground, muscling through position with our minds, how we think, how we hold on to truth, what we practice because of that truth. The best translation of steadfast from the Hebrew into English is to lean on, something that is supportive, for us to be able to rest in. So when we are being steadfast, we have to have help. Let me offer this kind of metaphor. I don't know if you've ever had, when I have sinus issues, sometimes I get my balances off. I get it's almost like vertigo, but not quite. And sometimes all it takes is just a little finger touch, or just barely leaning on something, pressing against something to kind of orient myself. That's choosing steadfastness, not of your own strength, but depending on the one who will be our foundation. The steadfastness of mind, the Hebrews thought, and so did the Greek culture. Those are the two languages that the Old Testament and New Testament are respectively written in. And so we have to understand how they used language and not just assume their words are ours. That's why we have to talk about steadfast is not like from the Western culture of standing firm in my own power, but trusting in the foundation that God gives me. The same is true for mind. It's not just about how I think, but it's the inner person and the reasonable part of me. I can be so unreasonable. I don't need any of y'all to put a little comment there about that whenever you've had to deal with one of my come aparts here. But we can all be unreasonable about it when we don't trust our own experience of God being present with us as our source of steadfastness. It's not our own power, it is God's made available to us. And I think I've mentioned recently, too, that John Wesley, who was kind of the father of the Wesleyan movement, he never intended this to be a denomination. However, it was a call for him. He heard in his own heart to practice in his own. It's not just about the priest or the minister doing something for me. It is about my own practice of faith. And so mind, the way I reason through things, is one way that I experience God. But it is only when I open my mind to do that. So the one who is steadfast meaning leaning on God, to open my mind, to give me a deeper ability to reason through things, will lead me to trust in God. And that is the one whom God keeps, holds, provides for, overwhelms with perfect peace. We find ourselves now in the middle of the verse. And perfect peace is a very strange phrase because there is no Hebrew word for perfect. We think of perfect as absolutely flawless. It's complete. It's whole. Perfection is there's nothing else you can do to it to make it right-er. It is perfect the way that it is. Well, when we look at the definition of peace or shalom in the Hebrew language, the best definition is not just that absence of conflict or chaos. It is completeness, soundness. Yes, in the Greek we would use the word salvation, we would use the word health, but it is this complete wholeness that comes to us. And so if we were to translate or transliterate that phrase, you will keep that person who is steadfast of mind, the one who trusts in you, O God, you keep them in perfect. You keep them in peace. We have a hard time in a lot of ways finding the right words. Maybe absolute is one of those words we would add to the list that helps us express perfection. But it can't get more perfect than that. Maybe that's the phrase we need to use. The one who is steadfast of mind, the one who knows that I will only be stable, I will only be reasonable, I will only be safe, I will only know peace when I lean on the one who is the source of all those things for me. And because that is true, I trust in you. I give you all of my vulnerability, oh God. I give you everything that could be my undoing. And because I'm willing to do that, I know you will make things so perfect I don't even have the words for it. Now be careful. We get a picture in our minds, do we not, of what perfection would look like. For those of you who are battling illness, you're facing treatment dates, you're trying to find a cure for a diagnosis that you never dreamed that you would hear. You're facing a rift in a relationship that seems to be unmendable. You have lost and lost and lost again until you feel like life has been sucked right out of you. When we are in those dark moments, our definition of perfect may limit how God can be seen and known and felt at work in our lives. So be careful. Let perfect be completely and soundly what God will bring to you. Don't miss anything, my friends, that God has for you this day. But know this, God is trustworthy. And God is stable enough that God will make you steadfast of mind, but also of heart and spirit. And when you will trust, absolutely, peace comes even in the midst of exile and wilderness for the Israelites. Peace will come in the midst of conflict and unsoundness in our bodies. Peace will come even as there is chaos around us. Peace will come in the midst of uncertainty. Peace is God's sweet promise to us in Jesus for any and every moment. Trust Him. Lord God, we thank you for this sweet promise that comes from Isaiah's words, but the words were given by you. And so the Israelites may have dreamed of a day when that would be their truth, their reality. We claim that for our very day today. And so for those who are hearing this promise for the very first time, God, I'm bold enough, I want to thank you right now for whatever your Spirit does to help well up within them this confidence and this courage to trust that the promise is sound. That when we trust in you, when the one who is willing to trust in you, revealing and letting go of all of our vulnerabilities, we find a steadfastness of mind that reveals to us just how peaceable we can be, even when the storms rage around us. And Lord, don't get us started on talking about those storms. That draws our focus away from you. And we are focused on this one today who is the Prince of Peace. Give us that peace that we need, Lord, and teach us how to prepare our hearts and our minds, our entire lives, for the peace that will come to us, no matter our circumstances, when we lean on you. In this second week of Advent, Lord, we really do wish that peace would simply come flooding in, that somehow you would flip a switch or open the dam and it would flood through. I don't know if we could stand it, but we do trust in this promise, Lord, and that is you are trustworthy. You do make us steadfast, and peace is coming. May it come today in a new and powerful way for everyone who hears my voice, for everyone who trusts in the words of Isaiah, who leans on you. And we are bold enough in our faith that we simply say, thank you. Amen. My friends, have a wonderful day. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. May peace be yours.